Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Capital G just getting settled in to show off another commander deck here for you. Another Sultai commander, in fact. This is Muldrotha the Gravetide. One hell of a value generator. Now, unlike the last Sultai build that I showed off, which was Damia, Sage of Stone, Muldrotha is a deck that I currently run. And there she is. And the reason I run her is because I like casting things from our graveyard. A couple years back I did a deck tech on Gaysan Giraffe, which let you cast only zombies from your graveyard and only once per turn. I still play that deck, but Muldrotha is more interesting because you can cast any creature from your graveyard, you can play lands from your graveyard, you can play artifacts from your graveyard, even planeswalkers. So I love the flexibility that she offers. I decided to try putting a couple of these experience legends into the deck to see how well that would work out, and it gives us a fun build. This one is probably between the jank and casual levels. Don't expect to win like intense competitions with this one. But if you're just sitting down around the table with a bunch of friends, you should have some good time with this one. Now, there are no instants or sorceries in this deck. I've decided to go with an all-permanents deck to try and take advantage of Muldrotha's ability to her fullest. So let's start with our experience counter, guys, here. Azuri Claw of Progress gains you, the player, an experience counter whenever he's in play and you put a creature that's power 2 or less onto the battlefield. Marin gets an experience counter whenever she sees one of your creatures die. Azuri looks at how much experience you have and puts that many +1/+1 counters on a creature you control. Any creature, doesn't have to be, well, any other creature, cannot be on Azuri himself, I don't believe. Yep, another target creature. So you can't make Azuri humongous, but you can make your other creatures humongous. Turn Muldrotha into a possible one-hit kill, in fact. And of course, with Marin, she'll take a look at the number of experience counters you have. She'll pull a creature from your graveyard, and if you have more experience counters than that creature has casting cost, it comes directly into play. Otherwise, it goes to your hand. So these two will power up our graveyard and our creatures respectively. Gerard, Golgari Lichlord, will allow us to sacrifice another creature and have each of our opponents lose life equal to the sacrificed creature's power. So Azuri makes something big, Gerard sacrifices it, and everybody else pays for that. Habanavila Zav. That Surveil one is nice because it puts the top card of our library into our graveyard for only 2 mana. And it allows us to copy something in our graveyard, so if we want to copy something rather than cast it and wait for the summoning sickness to wave off, we can use Lazav for that. And Rashmi, of course, to generate even more value, because regardless of where we cast our first spell, we could get another spell off the top of our library. Everything essentially gains Cascade. So we cast our first spell, reveal the top card of our library, and if it's a non-land card, you can cast it without paying its mana cost. If we don't cast it, we put it in our hand. So every time we play a spell, we draw a card or play an extra spell for free. Got Sav right here. I don't have a lot of sacrifice going on, but whenever she's out and I do get some sacrifice going, we can pay 2 life whenever we sacrifice a black creature to cause each other player to sacrifice a creature. And we can gain 2 life every time we sacrifice a green creature. We sacrifice Savra, of course, that'll be both. If we sacrifice a card like Underrealm Lich, which is both colors, we can do both of these triggers. Yes, we've got both Underrealm Lich and Taigam Sidisi's Hand in this deck. They both really and truly impact our draws. In the case of Taigam, we don't get to draw at all, but at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to look at the top 3 cards of our library, put 1 into the hand, and the rest into the graveyard, which means we draw 3 cards. Underrealm Lich does not skip our draw step, but in fact replaces every single draw with that same ability. The fact that you can pay 4 life and give him indestructible, added bonus. So yeah, here's a bunch of cards that'll help us not only draw into our deck, but also fill up our graveyards. Something you might be surprised by is Fa-Adea-Seer. I think that's how you say it. I don't know, I haven't looked this up, but I'm going with Fa-Adea-Seer. Tap, draw a card and reveal it. If it isn't a land, discard it. And of course, she's time shifted from Sinbad. Same thing, but in blue. Thought it was fun to play both of these. I initially put Sinbad in and then remembered that he was time shifted, so it was fun to put both of our time shifted cousins in here. Lots more Surveil, of course, with Doom Whisperer. Pay 2 life, Surveil 2, and that is on a 6/6 flying trample body that's only 5 mana. Doom Whisperer is the nuts in this deck. We can put as many cards as we want into our graveyard with him. Dream Eater only puts 4 cards, but also takes something off the board temporarily, and it has flash, so it's a nice little trick you can kind of keep in your back pocket whenever someone decides to take a swing at you. The House Guild Mage. Look at that. 3 mana tap, Surveil 2. So look at the top 2 cards of your library, put them in your graveyard. Basically. And we also have the option of tapping down a creature. It doesn't actually tap down the creature, but it takes a creature that's already tapped and prevents it from untapping. So a nice little control card here for us as well. Kiora is our only planeswalker in this build. She's here for the -2, reveal the top 4 cards of our library, and we put a creature and or a land. And since everything's permanent in this deck, it is very likely that you will hit both a creature and a land with that -2. And then the rest go into your graveyard, so -2, draw 4 cards. Basically. And +1 for untapping is also useful. -8 will never... You may decide to go for this. I'm not saying you can't get there, but that's not what she's here for. Crozan Tusker, of course, cycling, which means we pay 3, pitch it, and we get to search our library for a basic land and put it into our hand when we cycle it, which means we get to do the search and we get to draw the card. And then he's a 7 mana 6/5 sitting in our graveyard ready to go. Magus of the Bazaar. Draw 2 cards and discard 3 cards. Only in Muldrotha is this really that good, because that's tap, draw 2 cards. That's all that reads. It's a 0/1 for 2 that taps for 2 cards. Muldrifter, we're always going to use its evoke cost. It's basically 3 mana, draw 2 cards. And you can evoke from the graveyard too. So, meet Sushi, by the way. There she is. Does she want to look at the camera? No, she doesn't want to look at the camera. She's too shy. Yeah, there's a cat in my video, which means I'm going to get like 30,000 views. Sultai Ascendancy. This nifty little enchantment says at the beginning of our upkeep, we get to look at the top 2 cards of our library, put any number of them into our graveyard, and the rest back on top of our library. So, allow me to rephrase. At the beginning of our upkeep, look at the top 2 cards of our library, put them into our graveyard. Wall of Lost Thoughts, a 0/4 defender, comes into play, and it flips the top 4 cards of our library into our discard. We can target any player we want, but we're going to use this on ourselves. Watcher in the Mist. Also Surveils 2, it's a 3/4 flyer for 5. A little expensive perhaps for what it does. And we can probably, probably has an upgrade opportunity here, but it gives us a flying creature. We don't have a lot of flyers, so anything that flies that we can recast fairly easily, I'm going to roll with. Whisper Agent, 3 mana 3/2 with flash, that gives us a Surveil. World Shaper, 4 mana 3/3, it comes down, we flip our top 3 cards into our graveyard. When it attacks, we do the same, and when it dies, we get to bring all of our lands from our graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. Acidic Slime, of course, blows up an artifact, an enchantment, or a land, and it's a 2/2 Death Toucher. So this is easily going to go to our graveyard and easily be recast. Coiling Oracle, also easy to go to the graveyard and easy to recast, and this gives us plenty of card advantage. It's going to look at the top card of our library, and if it's a land, it enters the battlefield. If it's not, it goes to our hand. Farhaven Elf pulls a basic land out of our deck, puts it right onto play tapped. Again, easily recastable and easily sent to the graveyard with its 1/1 power and toughness. A little bit of undergrowth here of both Hatchery Spider and Muldrotha. Now undergrowth of course counts the number of creatures in our graveyard, and their abilities are stronger as a result. So in the case of the Hatchery Spider, a 5/7 creature with reach, we get to reveal the top X cards of our library, where X is the number of creature cards in our graveyard, and we can put a green permanent from among them onto the battlefield. Converted mana cost X or less. So we've got 7 cards in our graveyard. We get to look at 7 cards, find the green permanent, casting cost 7 or less, and put it into play. Muldrotha. It says 9 mana, but it's not 9 mana, because it costs 1 less for each creature card in our graveyard. And when it enters the battlefield, we get to bring a land from our graveyard back onto the battlefield. Mold Shambler, crazy little word there. It's a 3/3 for 4, but we are always going to play this with the kicker, because when it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, we get to destroy a non-creature permanent. That includes Planeswalkers. War of the Spark is coming. Spoilers are supposed to start in a week or so as of this recording, so feel like these commons will prove very valuable in our format moving forward. Meteor Golem, 7 mana 3/3 that destroys any non-land permanent an opponent controls. And what's nice about the artifact creatures is that we can play it as our artifact for the turn or as our creature for the turn. So same is true here with Noxious Gearhulk. 5/4 with Menace that destroys another target creature, and we gain life equal to that creature's toughness. Fraction Delver lets us bring a creature back from our graveyard a little more quickly. And Ravenous Chupacabra comes in, destroys target creature and opponent controls. I like this text, target creature and opponent controls. If somebody decides to take control of our turn and cast the Ravenous Chupacabra, well, they can't blow up my own things with it, but they can blow up an opponent's thing with that. Rex Sage, destroy an artifact or an enchantment. Skittering Surveyor pulls out a basic land from our deck, puts it in our hand. Tornado Elemento. We don't like flyers, so this is going to come in and shoot down most flyers in this game. Comes in, 6 damage to each creature with flying, and on top of that, when it swings, it doesn't matter if it's blocked or not, the defending player will take 6. Woodfall Primus, we're looking at a 6/6 with trample. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent, and it persists. So, yes, it's 8 mana, but it'll blow up a non-creature permanent. That's any land, any planeswalker, any artifact, any enchantment. And then when it hits the graveyard for the first time, it'll come back right away and do that again. Pair with Azuri Claw of Progress to add some +1/+1 counters onto him, therefore eliminating the -1/-1 counter, and you'll never have to cast it a second time. A couple of Aura of enchantments here. Animate Dead. I like the idea of being able to pay 2 mana and recur a creature from any graveyard, as long as the card is either in my hand or in my graveyard. Yes, the creature I reanimate will get a -1 power, but not a big deal. Dead Man's Chest. Now this is a way to steal cards from other players' decks, which is always a fun thing to do. You throw this on a big creature an opponent controls. Let's say they've got 5/6 power. When it dies, you get to exile cards equal to its power from the top of their library, and you get to cast those cards as long as they remain exiled. We cannot cast them for free. We have to pay for it. But still, all of a sudden, it's basically when a enchanted creature dies, we draw 7 cards, essentially. And it doesn't count towards our maximum hand size either, so we don't have to discard down. Journey to Eternity. You throw that onto a creature that we control, and when it dies, we get to bring the creature back into play right away, and we get to flip this card. Now, since I don't have the flipped card art here, I'm just going to go through my deck and find my copy and show you the flip side. I believe the card is called Azul, and it taps for any color of mana. It's a land that taps for any color of mana, and we can pay 5 and tap it to return a creature from our graveyard to play. So it's another way to reuse our own creatures. There that is, by the way. So that's the flip side of Journey to Eternity. If anyone hasn't had a chance to see this yet. Especially since Ixalan was comparatively unopened. There are a few people that have opened Ixalan than, say, Dominaria or Ravnica Allegiance. Some older enchantments here. We'll start with Mystic Remora. This is one that's been gaining in popularity in our format because, well, 1 blue, we get an enchantment where when any of our opponents cast a non-creature spell, we get to draw a card unless they pay 4. So while Rhystic Studies, in fact, it's any spell that we could potentially draw a card off of, but they only have to pay 1 mana, whereas with Mystic Remora, they have to pay 4 for any non-creature spell. Yes, we have to pay cumulative upkeep. Costs 1 mana to do so. 1 mana, then 2 mana, then 3 mana, then 4, but what we can do is we can keep it out for maybe 1 to 2 turns, let it go to the graveyard, and then with Muldrotha on the field, recast it for the 1 blue. That cumulative upkeep means nothing. And here's some oddball offense that I've got here in my deck. This is Pillar Tombs of Aku. Black, and 2 for an enchant world. During each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a creature, or that player loses 5 life and you bury the Pillar Tombs of Aku. So they have to sacrifice a creature, and if they don't, they lose 5 life. So we'll cast it on our turn, let it go around. It may take 1 lap, it may take 2, but somebody's going to be taking 5 damage from this thing. And then we recast it, and it happens again. Forcing sacrifices is a great way to deal with Colossi, of course. So another way of forcing sacrifice, the Eldest Reborn. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker on Chapter 1, the turn that you play it. Again, War of the Spark is coming. Excellent to have something like this. Each opponent discards a card for Chapter 2. And then Chapter 3 lets us put a planeswalker or creature card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. Traveler's Cloak. How'd you like to give one of our creatures landmark of our choice and draw a card? That's what this is for. And yes, even if this hits the graveyard, we can throw it onto another one of our creatures and draw another card. So the 2-for-1 drawback of auras, totally negated here. Burnished Heart. 3 mana artifact creature. 3 in sack to get 2 basic lands out of our deck and onto the battlefield tapped. Font of Fertility, a green enchantment, costs 1 green, and then green and 1 to sack it and get a basic land card from our library, put it onto the battlefield tapped. So very, very easy to thin our deck. Sakura Tribe Elder makes it the easiest of all. 2 mana, and all we have to do is sacrifice it. No, the only cost is sacrifice it. We don't have to pay anything once he's on the board. Mishra's Bauble, look at that, 0 cost artifacts. This little Cheerio lets us tap, sack, and look at the top card of another player's library. Then we get to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So while we don't get the card draw right away, it's a 0 cost artifact. And it's giving us free cards. Maybe not at instant speed or the speed that we wanted, but you know what? On our turn, Muldrotha is out. Play the Bauble, tap, sack, and at the beginning of our opponent's turn, we get to draw a card. I don't see anything wrong with that, especially at 0 cost. Universal Solvent costs only 1, but it's 7 to activate and destroys any permanent. Vampire Hex Mage, Bane of Planeswalker. 2/1 first strike, we can sacrifice it, remove all counters from target permanent. And in the unlikely event that you do not have any planeswalkers to hit with this, there's always creatures that left +1/+1 counters. And if that still isn't the case, then we can use it to take age counters off of our Mystic Remora. Verdant Eidolon, 4 mana 2/2, but we pay green and sacrifice it to add 3 mana of any one color to our mana pool, and anytime we play a multicolored spell, such as Muldrotha, we get to return this from our graveyard to our hand. So, A little bit of mana acceleration here for us. Birthing Pot. Figured why not. We do want our 4 mana legendary creatures out on the board fairly quickly, so Birthing Pot is a way to get them out. Of course, it's got the fraction mana thing going on, so you can pay 2 life or pay the green to cast it, and pay 2 life or pay the green to use it. And sacrificing a creature to find another creature that costs at least 1 more and put it into play. And not at least, but exactly 1 more. Dreamscape Artist. 3 mana, tap, discard a card, and sack a land. Search our library for 2 basic lands, put them into play. So with Muldrotha out, that's 2 taps, sack. Get our 2 lands, basic lands, put them directly into play, and then replay the land we sacrificed from our graveyard, and perhaps even cast the card we discarded. Possessed Portal, one of my secret weapons, an all-time favorite of mine. Some people are like, yeah, it's not a great card, but this is a stacks card. It is not nice. You put this down. If a player would draw a card, that player skips that draw instead. Card draws are skipped. Every player skips their card draw. At the end of each turn, each player sacrifices a permanent unless they discard a card from their hand. So every turn, everybody's discarding or sacrificing. Fortunately for us, we A, cast cards from our graveyard, and B, have other replacement effects that puts cards directly into our hand without actually drawing them. So this portal is going to shut down every other deck. All they can do is sit and watch as we accrue more value, load up the board with creatures, and swing in. Priest of the Forgotten Gods. I wonder if they're going to bring back the Nephilim. Because the Nephilim, if I remember correctly, were considered forgotten gods on Ravnica. But lore things aside, 2 mana for a 1/2. It's tap and sack 2 other creatures. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sack a creature. You add double black and draw a card. So draws us a little further into the deck. Definitely better in a token strategy than rather than what we have here. But since we can recast everything and we have artifact creatures, we tap, we sack an artifact creature and a non-artifact creature, and recast them both. We come up ahead a card, and we are ahead of all of our opponents by 2 life each. So, I like it. Sage of Latnam, sack an artifact, draw a card. Simple as that. How about we sack our Zern Orb? 0 cost artifact. Sacrifice the land to gain 2 life. It may happen where you actually run out of land, so you can sacrifice a land and then immediately replay it. Best way to do it is with basic land, say basic forest. You tap it, sack it, play it from your graveyard with Muldrotha, tap it, and you've got 2 green mana with 1 land. Going into our mana rocks, of course, we got our Signet package, we've got a Felwar Stone, Soul Ring, a Sultai Banner. And how's this for a land that we want to sacrifice with our Zern Orb, and then replay once we have Muldrotha out, Bojuka Bog. Let's nuke our opponent's graveyards, everyone. Other than that, Blighted Woodland to search out a couple of basic lands from our deck and put it onto the battlefield tapped. Happen to have a breeding pool floating around, so there that is. I am playing the Karoo lands, why not? Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Exotic Orchard. There's a Gregory Rock Farm. We have 6 forests in the deck. We have a High Market for a sacrifice outlet. 4 islands. Got a Grixis Panorama that lets us search for a basic island or swamp. It says mountain as well, but we're not running any mountains for obvious reasons. A couple of memorials. Memorial to Genius to 5, sack and get 2 cards. Memorial to Unity. We can look at our top 5 cards, find a creature, and put it into our hand. So, a couple of back pocket ways of drawing extra cards. Mossfort Bridge, same kind of deal. We hide away a card, and once we have creatures with power 10 or greater on the board, we can cast whatever is under here for 1 green mana. 6 swamps in the deck. We have an Opal Palace because Muldrotha is likely going to die, so hopefully we can recast her and make her bigger using the Opal Palace. Playing the Tainted Isle and the Tainted Wood, so as long as we have a swamp, these produce black-green and black-blue. Terramorphic Expanse, of course. Zofran Void, Yavimaya Coast, and Teleria West. This is here to tutor out our zero-cost artifacts, although it wouldn't be out of the question to transmute this for another land. Alright, so with that being done, let's see what roughly a deck like this would cost. We're looking at 186.36 for this particular build. For anyone who's a little more budget oriented, you could probably find some savings by dropping Savros, and Sacrifice is only a minor theme in the deck. You could also find some savings by dropping the Teleria West. It's an excellent card in this deck, but it's not essential. That little uncommon from, I believe, was Future Sight is in fact probably one of the more expensive cards in this deck. It is not a intense build by any means. And what does EDH Rec have to suggest for us? Now, off the hop, I know that Glenalundra Archmage is baller in this deck. I don't have one though. But their suggestions include the Plaguecrafter, which, with the upcoming War of the Spark, I see this being a great choice for recurring forced Planeswalker sacrifice. Opulent Palace. I'm surprised I didn't have one handy here. I should probably go through my cards, see if I've got one. If I do, I'll add that in straight away. Some other non-basic lands that tap for one or the other color. Overgrown Tomb, Hinterland Harbor. Pernicious Deed. Sacrifice to destroy each artifact, creature, and enchantment with converted mana cost X or less. I would consider this for a Sultai Planeswalker build, since this does not affect Planeswalkers. But since I do want to try and keep my permanents on the board, I am not as interested in this. Lightning Greaves, obviously to protect our board. I don't have enough Lightning Greaves for all my decks, so I don't have a pair in this one. And Prime Speaker Vanifar, of course. If I'm playing, I'm already playing the Birthing Pot, so why not play Birthing Pot on a stick? Alright, and that'll do it for Muldrotha. Let me know what you all think. Have yourself a great evening, and we will chat again next time. Bye for now.